We're coming on the air with the first comments from members of the Buffalo Bills, literally in just the last couple of minutes, since Demar Hamlin had to be resuscitated on the field on Monday Night Football. And we're getting some optimistic updates about what's being described as remarkable improvement that he's making. What Hamlin's doctors say was the big question on his mind when he first woke up. Plus, stunning new details on the murder of 4 University of Idaho students, the update a lot of people have been waiting for. A ton of new information we're just now learning, including how cops linked the suspect to the scene and the chilling moment when a survivor almost came face to face with the killer. Plus, Groundhog's Day, but with less Bill Murray over on Capitol Hill because Kevin McCarthy still does not have the votes to become the next House Speaker. What one congressman-elect is telling me about the drama on the House floor and what may change before maybe ballot number 11. Plus, it's not an episode of Family Feud, but it may feel that way for the U.S. men's national soccer team. The details that seem straight out of a soap opera on why the team's coach is under investigation and the mom of a player may be too. We're also looking ahead at tomorrow's jobs report and a new rule from the Biden administration that could help you quit more easily and get more money. That's coming up a little bit later on in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and literally as we were walking into the studio, we heard for the first time from Buffalo Bills head coach Sean McDermott and quarterback Josh Allen after Demar Hamlin's doctors laid out what they described as the remarkable improvement he's made in the last few days. Allen is saying the scene of Hamlin getting hit and collapsing on field just replays over and over in his head. He says that knowing Hamlin's doing better, there's nothing that could bring them down now. But listen to how emotional it got in just the last couple of minutes. Watch.
Being on that field, you lose sleep, you hurt for your brother, a lot of shared grief.
We're also getting the first direct on-camera update from UC Medical Center. Hamlin is still critically ill. He has a breathing tube in. But the big takeaway, it seems like his neurological function is intact. What does this mean? It means he can move his hands and his feet. He's actually held people's hands, including his parents. He's even able to answer questions, not speaking, but writing, asking specifically whether the Bills won on Monday night. Here's how the doctors responded.
When he asked, did we win? The answer is, yes, Demar, you won. You've won the game of life. It's not only that the lights are on, we know that he's home, and that it appears that all the cylinders are firing within his brain.
Maggie Vespa is outside UC Medical Center in Cincinnati, and it is such incredible news to hear even just that update, right? That the neurological function is back for Demar Hamlin. We're now hearing from Josh Allen, who was clearly just wrecked about this on Monday night, as were all of his teammates. What else do we need to know from that news conference with Bills, players, coaches for the first time since the game happened?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, Hallie, the Bills team just has been so tight-lipped, really not saying anything since this happened Monday night. We had heard a little bit about kind of what went down on the field. Yesterday, the Bengals head coach, Zach Taylor, telling us almost as soon as this happened, and frankly, right after Hamlin was taken off the field in an ambulance, the Bills head coach walked over to Taylor and said, I don't feel right about this. I need to go to the hospital. I can't be coaching this game. Here's more of what Sean McDermott had to say about kind of his feeling in those moments and his responsibilities in this press conference that just played out. Take a listen.
To me, the health and well-being of your staff and your players is the #1 job of a coach in this situation. And so that includes mental health.
And as you heard, as the coaches and the staff and those players got that update this morning, Josh Allen saying nothing could bring them down, Hallie. Everyone here is just elated, as you might have heard in the background. It's like a celebration here.
That's amazing. Tell us more about what we heard from doctors, because it was rather extraordinary to hear some of these questions and the answers. The idea that Hamlin is like writing, right? He can't speak because he still has a breathing tube in. They're still helping him, as they say, respirate, breathe, basically. There is still a long road ahead, even though these are such good signs right now.
Yeah, there's still a long road ahead, and it's interesting because like a lot of medical experts, and it's valid, have been kind of honing in on the benchmark of when is he going to be breathing on his own. Yeah. And this, we're not there yet. As you said, he's still on a breathing machine, but this is another huge benchmark. Again, no signs of brain damage. It seems like he's neurologically, in their words, intact. And as part of that, we asked, kind of on the road to recovery, is there a point now that you know his neurological function seems to be okay, that you really want to get him off the breathing machine, say by like X day, and if this doesn't happen, it seems like there's a problem. Here is what the doctors had to say.
When families ask me how long do I need to be in the ICU, how long is our family member going to need to be on a ventilator, the answer is as long as it takes and whatever you need.
In other words, they said no, there is no day by which they have to get him off the breathing machine, and if not, there's a problem. They said right now it just seems like good signs all around, and they also, the doctors today, came to talk to the media because they also wanted to celebrate this news, Hallie.
And that's what they kept saying, right? This idea that, like, the part of what helped save Demar Hamlin's life was the fact that there was such good medical care immediately when he collapsed on the field on Monday night. Are the Bills, did we get any sign from Josh Allen or the team today, this evening? Are they going to play on Sunday, or when's the next game?
So the press conference, I believe, is still going on, correct? We're still hearing from the team. Gotcha. So questions are being asked. They started off the press conference by saying, this is about Demar Hamlin. We are here to talk about Demar Hamlin. He's our focus. That being said, obviously reporters are going to ask that question, so we are still waiting to hear at this point. There were also, by the way, conflicting reports today about whether or not the Bills-Bengals match would resume. First, the AP saying an NFL source told them it would not resume, period. An NFL spokesperson minutes later telling NBC News no decision has been made. So still lots of moving parts as far as the regular season schedule goes, Hallie.
Yeah, for sure. But as you note, and as everyone has been rightfully saying since Monday night, right now the focus entirely on Demar Hamlin and his health. Maggie Vespa, thank you for those updates. It's nice to see those good signs, at least. Some stunning new information finally made public today about that mysterious murder of 4 University of Idaho students, and a chilling detail. A surviving roommate coming basically face to face with the killer the night that this all happened. We're learning this from some new documents just released late today, giving us new clues as to how investigators, after 6+ weeks, finally tracked down this suspect. First, from DNA on a knife sheath found at the crime scene. Second, from some surveillance video showing this white car passing the scene of the crime 4 times on the night of the murders. And then 3, from cell phone records that connected the suspect to the area of the crime the night the murders happened. It's coming as that suspect, appeared in court today after arriving in Idaho late last night. The judge denied bail and read each of the charges against him. You see him there. That was him. He didn't enter a plea. Dana Griffin joins us now from Moscow. And Dana, this is big stuff, right? This is significant because there have been so many questions about what was sort of taking so long for police to try to track down a suspect. We now know the investigatory work that they were doing. And these chilling details, like this testimony from a roommate who survived, who ended up locking him or herself into her room or his room to be able to try to protect themselves. I mean, it's shocking.
It's very shocking, Hallie. Some of the details that were released in that affidavit was that this roommate woke up around 4 o'clock in the morning, heard what she thought was crying, opened the door. Okay, didn't think much of it, closed it again, opened it again when she heard who she believed was Kaylee Gonzalez say, there's someone in the house. She looked, didn't see anything, and then she says she later heard a male's voice say, it's okay, I'm here to help. Moments later, that dark figure, clad in black, wearing a mask, had his head and his mouth covered, as she said in that affidavit, looked at her, or that she looked at him, as he kept walking out the door. She was frozen, apparently in fear, and the big thing about that is we don't know what exactly happened after that. Several hours, as police have reported, went by before they were even called. So a lot of questions emerging from that, but to come face to face, she even described the man as 5'10", athletic, with bushy eyebrows, and police say that describes Kohlberger to a T, Hallie.
And that's just one of the details that we're learning from these new documents here. There's also some info. Why are they tracking his car back in December?
So we found out through that affidavit that they were onto that white Hyundai Elantra a lot sooner than the public knew about it. They put out a be on the lookout to law enforcement back in November, and then December 7th was when it was made public. And they initially said it was a 2011 to 2013 model, but we later found out that it was a newer model because Brian Kohlberger's vehicle is a 2015 model. So they found that vehicle at his parents' house back on December 30th when they made that arrest after he made that cross-country trip with his father. And that is another key as to why they are linking him to this murder, because they found surveillance video that shows a white Hyundai Elantra between 2:40 and 4:40 in the morning. And also Washington State University had surveillance video that showed that vehicle belonging to Kohlberger leave their campus before and after the murders, according to this affidavit, Hallie.
One of the Family members of one of the victims, Hallie Gonsalves, who we've heard from, her family here on the network, they were actually in court today. Incredibly, you have to think, emotional and difficult moment here. What else are we hearing from family members, from members of the community, and the next steps here?
Yeah, Hallie, it was very emotional, especially for Hallie Gonsalves' parents. Her mother was seen visibly emotional when the judge read her daughter's name. What happens next? They are going to be here for the long haul. As far as the community, this is very disturbing, and we've seen a lot of people on social media, not only in this community, but this case has garnered international intrigue. But everyone is just kind of shocked by some of these details. We know that Kohlberger will be back in court a week from today, and this is still sort of the administrative part of all of this. They still haven't set a hearing where he can kind of argue some of the evidence and actually make a plea, but we hope to learn more at that next court date next week. Hallie?
Dana Griffin live for us there in Moscow, Idaho. Dana, thank you so much. We've got a little bit of breaking news now. I've taken a live look on the left side of your screen at the floor of the House of Representatives, just a couple of blocks from where I'm sitting, because just within the last few minutes, we have now gone into a 10th round of votes for Speaker after no progress on rounds 1 through 9 over the past several days. You may be like, wait a second, Hallie, how is there no progress? There's talks. There are closed-door meetings with members trying to figure things out. There are conversations that we can see from the C-SPAN cameras on the House floor that are happening with these members, but there are still about 20 Republicans who are refusing to vote for Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy is refusing to drop out of this race. Today, you had Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, one of those 20 so-called Republican rebels, citing trust problems with McCarthy, feeling frankly PO'd after private negotiations about more concessions ended up getting leaked to the media. But with all this stuff, you've got McCarthy walking a pretty thin line, right? Because here's his challenge. He runs the risk. If he gives in too much to these 20 rebels on the far right of his conference, he runs the risk of then alienating some of the more moderate members who are supporting him now. He cannot afford to lose them either. Joining us now is Ryan Nobles, who's been covering this for the last 4 days and maybe 4 days or 4 weeks to come. Because what is the strategy, right? House Republicans, Kevin McCarthy's team, they'd like to get a motion to adjourn, I would assume, because then they can go and try to have some of these conversations, hash out some stuff, et cetera. It seemed like in the last few hours there were some indications, glimmers of hope that maybe they were getting closer to a deal in the next day or so. Is that real or is that wish casting?
I would argue, Hallie, just based on the reality of the situation, that it is wish casting, because there is nothing more evident than the reality of the vote that is taking place.
That's right.
And the simple fact of the matter is that Kevin McCarthy has not moved one single vote from away from his column into his column. And to me, that shows more than anything that if there is some sort of progress, it is not being translated into the path that he would like to see, which would have him leading toward the speakership. And so this continues to be a very difficult climb for him. As you mentioned, they continue to have these closed-door meetings. They continue to talk. He continues to offer up concessions. So far, it has yielded zero results. And I'm not sure exactly what it's going to take now to break this logjam, because he just seems to be continuing to run up against a brick wall here when it comes to these Republican rebels. And it looks now that it...
I was just going to say, you will not be surprised to hear
Yep.
that the tally shows he appears to lose vote number 10. Obviously, as you well know, Ryan, it's not a done deal till it's a done deal and the vote is gavelled. But that's, here we are yet again, right? 10th time was not the charm for Kevin McCarthy. I actually had a conversation just within the last maybe 90 minutes or so with one of the so-called rebels, Congressman-elect Dan Bishop of North Carolina. He's voted against McCarthy. He was super cagey on what the negotiations look like. He didn't like that I was asking him, although, it's our job. But he also didn't seem too worried about sort of the quote-unquote rebel group falling apart. Listen. Is there any concern that as these negotiations and these ballots continue to happen, these votes continue to happen, that some of the more moderate members of your party could end up working across the aisle with, let's say, Democrats in a hypothetical scenario? Has that been a concern in your mind at all as this goes along?
Part of the issue here is that this process is one in which you're seeking to gain benefit for the American people, but you're managing risks. Is there any chance? I think it's a very, very low chance, and I think we're going to get to a result that is good, better, an improvement for the country.
Question is, what is the result and when?
Yeah, and I think the one thing that Congressman-elect Bishop is maybe alluding to, but not coming right out and saying, is that there may be an outcome here that Republicans end up settling on that he's happy with, but he leaves out the part of whether or not Kevin McCarthy is part of that equation.
Well, that's right.
Yeah, and I think what I keep going back to, Hallie, every time I talk to one of these members of Congress is that McCarthy seems to be the immovable object here, and that nothing's going to change until his role in all of this changes. And, we can talk all we want about these concessions that are being made, and I do think that there's a point where these concessions maybe get him 15, 16 of these 20, 21 votes that he's not voting for. His real problem is he's got 5 people who at the very outset of this described themselves as never Kevins, and none of them have even moved an inch from that position. I talked to Lauren Boebert, about 2 hours ago, and I said to her specifically, are you ever going to vote for Kevin McCarthy, regardless of what he hands over to you? And she said, no, Kevin McCarthy will not become Speaker of the House with my vote. There's 4 other members of Congress that are just like that. He can only lose 4. That's 5. So I don't see, I know part of the conversation here is that maybe they can convince him to vote present. That allows him to remain never Kevins, but then he gets over the hump. I don't know. That seems at this point in the negotiations like a very difficult impasse. But this is where we are, Hallie. This conversation that you and I are having on Thursday is exactly like the conversation we were having on Tuesday, and not much has changed.
We'll pull out a little bit of why this matters, because one thing I've heard from members as I've been talking to them is this idea that, well, eventually the American public is going to get fed up. There's a sense, I think, among some that, people aren't watching the drama the way that they are. I actually do think that people are watching the drama unfold on the House floor, and there are bigger implications here. There's, logistical things. Are people getting paid? If you don't care if members of Congress are getting paid, what about their staff? What about national security things? There is no House Intelligence Committee. That doesn't exist right now. That has come up in some of the conversations that I've had. There are real potential, right? And there are some people who aren't worried about that yet. But if this continues to go down, there are some real logistical issues and national security issues that come up.
That's right. You mentioned staff members not being paid. Right now, members of these intelligence committees are not getting access to classified information. They're not being able to meet with heads of important government agencies and departments to talk about the work of the American people. That's not being done because there is no House of Representatives. And until they break this impasse, it's going to continue to be that way. This is not what the founders intended, and that's the position we find ourselves in.
Although some people are arguing, hey, this is democracy in action, as messy as it is. Ryan Nobles, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Tonight, crews across California are trying to help clean up the damage from that huge storm that's been rocking the state with very high winds, tons of rain, lots of flooding. Look at this. Look at some of the damage left behind. You've got trees piled up onto roads. You've got streets totally flooded. This is not just dangerous. It is deadly. 2 people have been killed, according to officials. A 19-year-old whose car hydroplaned on a flooded road, and a little kid, a 2-year-old, who was sitting in the living room when a tree crashed through the roof. Near Santa Cruz, there's a wharf we're about to see in the distance there. It collapsed under the strength of the waves and the wind that were blasting the coast. City officials have urged people in this area to get out today. They don't want them stuck in the middle of this. And then you're about to see the moment that a bunch of electrical transformers, that's them, they're exploding right there in the Bay Area. The storm has knocked out power for more than 130,000 people, with even more rain expected over the next few days on the West Coast. The storm moving north tomorrow. You see it on the radar. And then next week, guess what? Round 3, round 4, depending on how you keep track of this. Nyla Charles is in San Francisco for us. It is a mess. Nyla, what are you seeing?
We're seeing widespread flooding and extremely strong winds, the results of the most severe storm California has seen in the last 5 years. The effects of that here behind me in San Francisco, the winds overnight so strong that the steel canopy fell over. And that's just not the type of damage you usually see here in California. This type of damage usually associated with a hurricane, so something people here definitely aren't used to. We've also seen a lot of downed trees due to the ground being so saturated. So a lot of crews right now are working on getting all of that cleaned up. Here in San Francisco, about 70,000 people are still without power, and that's been another thing that's been difficult for people, because it's not just this storm, Hallie, it's also the last storm just last weekend. People were dealing with power outages there too. We spoke to an official with South San Francisco about how difficult it has been for the people who live here. Take a listen.
We were anticipating these high winds, but something like this you would never expect. We've had residents who had power out since 5 o'clock last night. We had 8,000 households. We're down to 3,000 this morning, but we're setting up a temporary evacuation point for those residents.
PG&E, California's largest power supplier, had a message from the CEO that was put on social media saying that at this point, they don't even know how long it will take to get everyone's power up and running because of this historic storm. They say in some cases, they've even had access issues due to the downed trees. On social media, we've seen some people say they've gone more than a day without power. And again, it's not just about the current power outages. It's about what's possibly to come with more storms on the way. Hallie?
Nyla Charles, thank you very much for that. You got President Biden today announcing some new rules at the southern border, some new restrictions to try to cut down on illegal immigration. You've got the administration sending up to 30,000 migrants from Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Haiti back into Mexico every month. It'll also provide a legal path for up to 30,000 migrants from those countries to legally enter the U.S. each month, a policy that goes into effect immediately and comes as we're seeing this crisis, humanitarian crisis on the southern border, with the president under a bunch of political pressure to do something about it. Mike Memley is joining us now. Mike, talk us through, plain English it for me, right? What is this new restriction by the president, by the administration? What does it sort of pragmatically on the ground mean and do, and what's its significance?
Well, I think I'll invoke Julie Ainsley, who scooped these details well ahead of the announcement today, which is it's kind of slamming a door but opening a window to those who we see continuing to head toward the border to try to enter the U.S. What the White House is saying is that they instituted this new program, a parole program for some of those refugees coming from Venezuela, which is one of the sort of major sources of the flows we're seeing right now. And what it does is it's saying basically don't come to the border. If you think you're going to get it into the country by coming to our doorstep to the Mexico border, that's not going to work. Stay home, download this app, apply for asylum from your home country. If you have a sponsor, somebody willing to take you in the U.S., if you pass the security check, then you might be one of those 30,000 people from the additional countries they've now expanded this to, Cuba, Haiti, and Nicaragua, who could enter the U.S. and have a legal status here for 2 years. But under this new policy, they say if you do come to the border, Mexico has actually agreed to help shoulder some of the burden there. We're going to be able to expedite the expulsion process, get you back into Mexico even quicker. And they're also surging more immigration judges, asylum offices to the border to help to try to manage this flow. So what the White House is basically looking at is with some of the legal limbo we still have because the Supreme Court wants to take up Title 42 and hear it out in a couple months, they're trying to at least expand sort of this program that they see has worked. They say it's cut down 90% the number of Venezuelans coming to the border, and they obviously would like to see that across the board.
There's a political context here, as there always is when anything happens with the White House, because when the House eventually, in days or weeks, gets sworn in and there actually is a functioning House, it's going to be controlled by Republicans who have promised for months now to put pressure even more on the president to do something on immigration, on the border, et cetera. We heard a little bit from the president on that today. Listen.
I'll sit down with anyone who, in good faith, wants to fix our broken immigration system. But if the most extreme Republicans continue to demagogue this issue and reject solutions, I'm left with only one choice: to act on my own, do as much as I can on my own to try to change the atmosphere.
Help us understand the broader political context of this one here, Mem.
So, Hallie, you'll remember the White House, President Biden, Vice President Harris, none of them really wanted to talk about immigration for most of the last 2 years. Why? Because it's total Democratic control here in Washington. And so the problem was completely theirs to own. And we reported in October that one of the first things the White House was going to do this year, and we're seeing it today, is try to kick off a conversation about both immigration policy, but even potentially legislation. What the White House really wants to do here is say, we're doing everything we can to try to deal with the reality at the border to manage this problem, but we really need legislation to really fix this issue long term. And Republicans are really good. We've even heard it in some of these nominating speeches, right, from Republicans on the floor in the House talking about the crisis at the border. They need legislation to do it, and they want to really call Republicans bluff. Get here, show us your bill, and maybe we can work together.
Mike Memley, outside the White House there for us tonight here in Washington. Mem, thank you. You've got Amazon announcing today it's going to lay off more than 18,000 people, twice as many just about than people expected to see. The company's CEO forced to make a public announcement about the cuts after the plans got leaked, writing, "These changes will help us pursue our long-term opportunities with a stronger cost structure." That is some corporate speak for we're going to try to make more money by laying some people off, it seems. It comes as the December jobs report is coming tomorrow with some other new numbers out today showing about 235,000 jobs added last month. That's more than people thought. So if you're like, cool, yay, in theory, sure, that's a yay, but it also means that the Fed will probably keep raising interest rates to try to slow things down, right? Slow inflation. Joining me now is Brian Chung. And Brian, I feel like the story of the last 6 months has been this idea of a mixed bag when it comes to the economy, mixed signals, because there are signs the economy is still strong. And a new survey that talks jobs openings says there were like 10 million openings in November, okay? But then there's these headlines about huge layoffs. How are we supposed to understand this?
Yeah, it's like looking at a streetlight that's both green and red at the same time. I mean, the job openings, as you mentioned, 10.5 million. That's well above the pre-pandemic levels of around 7 million. And if employers are trying to fill this many jobs, that doesn't square with the fact that we're hearing from the likes of Amazon. By the way, one of the largest employers in the country choosing to lay this many people off. But remember, 18,000 is certainly a lot of people, but there are 153.5 million workers in America. And the overall picture, even though big tech is having some of these layoffs, shows that other parts of the economy are not suffering from these types of layoffs right now, Hallie.
So then how does this turn around? How do things change?
Yeah, well, I mean, the question here is, okay, this economy looks pretty good from the labor market side of things, 3.7% of an unemployment rate. We'll get an updated number on that tomorrow morning. But the question is, all of these employers are trying to fill, what, 10.5 million jobs? Where are they going to find them? And the answer is that they probably won't, because it's been a while and not that many people are looking for jobs. They can't find 10.5 million people out of nowhere. So the demand is high. People are going out, they're shopping, they're seeking services at a level that is not sustainable for the economy. So whether or not these companies decide to maybe take those job postings down, that could be the next shoe to drop. And even further than that, if the economy slows even faster, maybe then lay people off.
There's also this interesting twist now tonight because the FTC is proposing a new rule that says companies cannot limit people's ability to go work for somebody else. In other words, like non-competes, which, as you know, in our industry are pretty common, like basically bans non-competes. This really affects private sector workers. How does that play into things? Is it just an interesting nugget, or is there something more at play?
Yeah, well, we might be familiar with it, but a lot of other people as well, because the estimate's somewhere between 20 to 45% of the workforce do face non-competes. But really what this would do is the FTC would be allowing workers to have a little bit more optionality in leaving a job without a non-compete to go get a better paying, better job somewhere else. Now, employers would say, look, we are giving you the option, if you don't like a non-compete clause, to not take this job, and we need to have these non-competes to ensure the reliability and the sustainability of offering goods or services or whatever it is that we do. What's interesting is that the FTC, there are questions about the legality of making this rule. It might even face court challenges, so it's not over yet. But broadly speaking, the FTC trying to side with the worker here, Hallie.
Brian Chung, thank you very much. Good to see you. Coming up here on the show, why Jackson, Mississippi schools had to switch to virtual learning this week. Plus, Prince Harry out promoting his new memoir. And some of the details in it that he alleges are probably blowing up your group chats. We're getting into it later this hour with Keir Simmons. Don't go anywhere. South Carolina Supreme Court today hearing arguments on whether executing inmates with an electric chair or shooting them with a firing squad violates the state's constitutional provisions against cruel and unusual punishment in a case that is being closely watched. Why are these the two options that inmates have? Because in 2021, the state's General Assembly passed a law making the electric chair the default method of execution. Anybody who didn't want to be electrocuted could choose between a firing squad or lethal injection. The issue, though, is that lethal injections are not really available in South Carolina because they can't get the drugs to use for it. The drugs they had expired, and now pharmaceutical companies don't want to sell them more. Keep in mind, South Carolina has not conducted an execution in nearly 12 years. Across the country here, the current death row inmate population is the lowest it's been in more than 30 years. Look at the states you're about to see on your screen. They're the ones where the death penalty is used. Danny Savalos joins me now. And Danny, this is, I think, a case that is being watched and interesting to a lot of people around the country because of what it says about the death penalty in America. Talk through what we heard in these arguments here.
So fascinating. I mean, you see an argument that the death penalty by electrocution may be cruel and unusual, which is interesting because electrocution has been around for a while. And folks may be surprised to learn that there has been a history of using a firing squad for execution, although I believe only Utah has ever carried out executions by firing squad. And I think the last one was in the 70s. I could be wrong, but it has happened and there is precedent. That's what makes this so interesting, is that when you look at, traditionally, when you look at the Supreme Court, under the U.S. Constitution, whether something's cruel and unusual, you look at whether or not it's been used historically. Well, these have, and at least one judge in South Carolina has concluded that these methods of execution, firing squad and electrocution, are cruel and unusual.
This idea that pharmaceutical companies don't want to sell some of these products to South Carolina, they want to sell these drugs to the state. Explain that.
I don't blame them, but it actually goes both ways. The legislature for South Carolina refused to authorize funding for those chemicals, for those pharmaceuticals. But also, on the other hand, pharmaceutical companies, if they're thinking like large companies, they don't want the additional potential liability of being in the death business. That is not something that is going to help them either from a public relations standpoint or arguably even from a liability standpoint.
Danny Zavalos, thank you for that breakdown. I know that's one we're going to be watching. We expect a decision to still take a little while. Appreciate it. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Also out of South Carolina, the Supreme Court there has overturned the state's 6-week abortion ban. The court said it wasn't constitutional under the state constitution and the right to privacy there. That same explicit right is not in the U.S. Constitution. The ruling leaves the state's ban on most abortions after 20 weeks in place. Number 2, Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered his military to do a 36-hour ceasefire in Ukraine this weekend for Orthodox Christmas. It's supposed to start midday Friday and go until the evening, midnight Saturday. Doesn't look like Ukraine's going to follow it. They're super skeptical of this. Kyiv says the move is basically propaganda and a move by Moscow to buy more time for its troops to regroup. Number 3, Iran has released a top actress weeks after she was put in jail for criticizing the crackdown on anti-government protests. We still don't know what, if anything, she was charged with. She was one of several Iranian celebrities who supported protesters. Number 4, starting today, people coming into the U.S. from China will have to have a negative COVID test. As you know, as you probably know, we've talked about it a lot, China's been relaxing its really strict COVID policies recently. And now you've got the virus spreading about as quickly as you might expect. Other places like Canada, Japan, some European countries, they are also requiring travelers from China to take a COVID test before getting on their flights. Beijing is not super happy about this, threatening what they call countermeasures against countries involved. Number 5, public schools in Jackson, Mississippi are doing virtual learning today and tomorrow because of the city's water crisis that still has not been resolved. If you can believe it, Jackson is under that boil water notice even now. They've been since Christmas, when a winter storm damaged its water system that already had a lot of vulnerabilities. The school district says it has essentially no water pressure. It's trying to figure out when it's safe to go back in person. No word yet on when that may be. Still to come, a ton of drama in the U.S. soccer world involving the men's team head coach, one of his players, and that player's parents who also know the coach really well. A family feud like you wouldn't believe, coming up. The head coach of the U.S. men's national soccer team will be sidelined as a dramatic soap opera-esque family feud is now spilling out into the public and causing chaos for a program that really needs answers after the World Cup. Here's the deal. Greg Berhalter, the coach, will not lead the team at its upcoming camp this month because he's being investigated for apparently kicking his now wife Rosalind during a drunken and heated argument 31 years ago. And here's the twist, because U.S. Soccer is also investigating what they're calling inappropriate behavior by people outside the organization toward the staff. And we're learning they may have found out about this whole thing from the mother of a star player that Berhalter just basically benched at the World Cup in Qatar. Danielle Reyna apparently reported this kicking incident after she didn't like how Berhalter treated her son, Gio Reyna, who's a member of the national team. Berhalter's coming forward, fully admitting to the domestic violence incident. In a joint statement, the Berhalters, who have been married, by the way, for 25 years, they have 4 kids. They say they've learned from the incident and that, quote, "We will not hide from this. We didn't then and we won't now." Stephanie Gosk is following this. And Steph, like, this is so dramatic, partly because, like, if you follow soccer, you know these people. The Reynas and the Berhalters are soccer stars. They couldn't be closer. The wives, Rosalind and Danielle, were college teammates. Claudio Reyna the star player's dad was the best man of the coach in college, right? Like, they've known about this kicking incident for years after the Berhalters put it behind them. Why is this all happening now?
You know, Hallie, I'm going to lay out the timeline for you because it does get a little bit confusing. So you have Giovanni Reyna. He's a midfielder. He's an up-and-coming player, up-and-coming star for U.S. soccer. He goes to the World Cup. He only plays 7 minutes in the group round. And then he plays 45 minutes of that game against the Netherlands. He comes in the second half. Now, according to Greg Berhalter, during that period of time, U.S. soccer officials get a call from someone who threatens to reveal this episode from 31 years ago between Rosalind and Greg when they're in college, teenagers at the time, this kicking incident. And then nothing happens of it. Fast forward a few days later, World Cup, the U.S. is out. They're now back in the U.S. Berhalter is at an event, and he talks about the fact that an unnamed player was almost sent home. When it was revealed that that player was actually Gio Reyna, his mom then decides to call officials and reveal to them, and this is according to her own statement, these details about this incident back 31 years ago. And in a statement, she says, and we've got the statement here, she says, I told Ernie, he's the director of the U.S. Soccer Federation, that I thought it was especially unfair that Gio, who had apologized for acting immaturely about his playing time, was still being dragged through the mud when Greg had asked for and received forgiveness for doing something so much worse at the same age. So now you have this event from 31 years ago that they're talking about. It's a mess. There's this investigation now. Greg Berhalter, who was actually, his contract was going to be over anyway at the end of December. He's no longer the coach right now. And they have to figure out what went down, Hallie.
And this is part of why this is just so bananas on this, right? Is like you had Gio Reyna acknowledging, he had to like put out an Instagram apology about how he didn't put his best foot forward, didn't put in his best effort for the team in Qatar. He says he apologized to his teammates, to his coach, says he was told he's forgiven, et cetera. But like when you step back big picture, the U.S. men's soccer team has been trying to legitimize themselves for years, right? They have wanted to be a force on the world stage, but they haven't had much success, especially as you compare them to the women who keep winning World Cups. Mm-hmm. Now they've got 3.5 years till the U.S. hosts the World Cup itself. I mean, this is an organization that would like some stability, and this moment, there's anything but.
Yeah, exactly. And you have former players coming out. There is real anger within U.S. men's soccer right now. They had a pretty good showing at this World Cup. They obviously would have liked to have gone a little bit further, and they did not. But now they're mired in this scandal that is ugly, and it's this fight between some of the biggest names in U.S. men's soccer, fighting amongst themselves. Hallie.
Stephanie Gosk, thank you for being on top of this one for us. I'm sure you'll come back with twists and turns down the road. Appreciate it. I want to take you back now to our top story. Demar Hamlin collapsing on the field on Monday night, and more of what quarterback Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills QB, had to say in just the last couple of minutes. That news conference we've been telling you about what he's going through now that we know that Hamlin is at least neurologically functional and able to communicate in writing. Watch.
I think putting that helmet back on today was a really good thing for our team, and just to kind of go through that process. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't say, some people are going to be changed forever, after being on the field and witnessing that and feeling those emotions.
Incredibly emotional for so many people, and it comes as we're watching something else about this, right? The lies that are flaming through right-wing media that somehow what happened is connected to the COVID vaccine, which is absolutely 100% zero evidence of that. To be crystal clear, no evidence of that. I want to bring in Brandy Zadrozny because, Brandy, what we're seeing right now is part of this growing pattern where anytime there's some sort of health incident that makes headlines, it triggers anti-vaxxers to go out and spread lies. We saw that, for example, after Grant Wahl collapsed in Qatar, the soccer journalist. Help us understand what we're seeing online.
Yeah, so I watch online way more than I should. And anytime someone dies, Betty White, Bob Saget, DMX, like everyone comes out of the woodwork, the anti-vaxxers come out of the woodwork and say vaccines caused their death. Like, there isn't a death that they cannot attribute to vaccines. The problem with what happened Monday night with Hamlin was that 20 million people were watching. And so what happens when, we see something like that is we go online, right, and we look on our phones to see what happened. And because there was an absence of information about what happened, there's something called an information vacuum. And anti-vaxxers and far-right, provocateurs and media people were really happy to fill that vacuum up with lies. We saw Charlie Kirk doing it. We saw lots of people doing it reliably. Unfortunately, it's not a new tactic. Again, just it had a huge audience on Monday night.
How did this lie even get its start? Because you're seeing it, especially in the athletic world, right? You've got Utah Jazz Hall of Famer John Stockton, who says falsely that these healthy athletes are just collapsing because of the shot. How did this even get legs in the first place?
So this started, as far as I can tell, around fall 2021. What happened was people started making these collections of videos where they would mash up different players falling on the field. And that's like really visceral, as we all saw Monday night. When someone collapses, it really gets you. And that's really, that feeling of is where misinformation thrives. It's fear of the unknown and something that looks really scary, right? And so we saw that happening a lot in 2021. And then we saw it just increase throughout the year. Now, what I find really interesting is that we're seeing right now a lot of people hang their hat on these statistics saying that this has never happened before. Athletes are falling at greater rates than ever before. And we've tracked all of these statistics back to a website. It's not a peer-reviewed study. It's not from a public health organization or a sports organization. It's from a website called Good Sciencing. Now, I don't know about you, but that already sounds to me like a trigger that this is not necessarily information I can trust.
Sketcherooski. Right.
So what we can see, though, from when you actually look at the site is it's counting suicides, it's counting drug overdoses, it's counting things that we have no idea if it's from the vaccine. And it's run by, we just found out today, this Australian guy who operates a junk news website. So that's where the current thing comes from. But we're going to see a next iteration of it and a next iteration of it.
So then what's the fight against vaccine misinformation, right? How muscular is that?
There are some positive glimmers of hope in something called pre-bunking. And that's when people see how this stuff works, when they can recognize it, it's almost like a test drive. Then the next time they see it, they won't fall for it. So although this is unfortunate, this has happened and it's been shown to such a wide audience, over 20 million people, there is some hope here that since all these people have seen it now, if we can show it for what it is, maybe next time people won't fall for it.
Brandy Zadrozny, great to have you on. Thank you for that breakdown. Appreciate it. Coming up, the top doctors in this country are using a bar, like a pub, to do some cutting-edge research to find a cure. We'll explain for what coming up. Plus, tens of thousands of people are heading to the biggest tech thing in the country. What we're seeing at CES so far in just a minute. We've got some breaking news about that ongoing drama in the fight for the next House Speaker. Our team on the Hill is reporting that after a whole bunch of negotiations, some sources close to this whole thing think that maybe they're close to a promising, their words, promising deal. Working out the details. One lawmaker says he thinks he's going to see something in writing tonight. Hallie Vitale is joining us now. Hallie, for real?
For real, with the asterisk that things have been changing very quickly, and we're not sure until we actually see some changes on the vote tally that has been haunting all of our screens for 3 days now. But it sounds like what's happening is the negotiations that have been taking place behind closed doors in Tom Emmer's office all day, people running from those negotiations back up to the House floor to vote, many of them voting the opposite way from the way that the people in that room want them to if they're on Team McCarthy, underscoring why those negotiations and why we're all here in the first place. Nevertheless, those negotiations seem to be bearing fruit right now. The caveats are being put in writing, I'm told, by several people part of this process, and it's going to be shopped around the conference now. Moderates generally are expected to stay on board. There was nothing in there that could alienate them. On the other side of this is not going to get them all of the votes that they need, but it's going to get them a chunk. And frankly, with things as locked down and gridlocked as they have been, this is the first real tangible movement that we could see. No timing on when we're actually going to see this, Hallie. The way that it was put to me, though, is to think about this as a phase one, the first step of actually shaking things loose a little bit and showing that McCarthy might not be there yet, but can at least make some inroads to becoming Speaker.
Hallie, Vitale, thank you for bringing us that late-breaking reporting. We will see how real it actually is. Appreciate it, friend.
Yeah.
NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Northeast Bureau, New York City Uber drivers are striking again today, second time in a month. Why? Because Uber sued to block raises for drivers that were supposed to go into effect last month. There's a court hearing on the whole thing set for tomorrow. From our Midwest Bureau, Michigan Democratic Senator Debbie Stabenow says she is not going to run for re-election when her seat comes up next cycle. In a statement, she says she's been inspired by a new generation of leaders to pass the torch. She's been in the Senate since 2001, and this thing is going to be a competitive primary, deep bench of Dems in that state who could run and who are supposedly, reportedly thinking about it. From our West Coast Bureau, the big Consumer Electronics Show kicked off in Las Vegas today. It's the time when tech companies get to go and show off all their gadgets and their little rolly dog gadgets and their fancy cars and things that help us survive, like this emo bot that monitors the emotional state of elderly people. Interestingly, this year, CES banned Russian companies from participating because of its war in Ukraine. This month, a lot of people are getting in on dry January, but for the millions of people who deal with alcohol use disorder, or AUD, it's not that simple. That's why top scientists at the NIH are studying new drugs to help with that. And they're studying those drugs using an experimental bar, like a pub, with beer and alcohol and everything else. Medications are something that doctors say is so important right now, with excessive drinking up more than 20% since the pandemic started, according to research from Massachusetts General Hospital. Kate Snow talked with the director of the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism about that. Watch.
We've been seeing increases in the number of death certificates associated with alcohol, increases in hospitalizations, increases in liver disease, the full gamut, basically.
Right now, there are only 3 FDA-approved drugs to help with alcohol use disorder, but they don't have awesome side effects. They don't always work for everybody. Kate Snow is joining us now. So, Kate, it is so interesting that the place that researchers are using is a bar. It's not a real bar.
No.
Like, I couldn't go there, right? Tell us more.
No, you got to be part of the study if you want to go to that bar. It's a lab. And also, Hallie, by the way, those are bottles filled with food coloring. Sorry to burst your bubble. Those aren't actually real.
So no actual cores.
The taps
that makes
aren't
sense.
actually cores, exactly. But the idea is it looks like a bar. And so you sit there and they give you a experimental drug, right? In different kinds of studies, they're studying different drugs. And then they look at what your reaction is when they put your favorite drink of choice in front of you at that bar. And they're looking to see, like, are your urges lessened? Are you tempted to drink or not? And so that's what they're doing to try to see if these medications one day could be FDA approved and work.
What did you spoke with at least one person, right, who participated in this? What did he tell you?
Yeah, I spoke to 63-year-old Mark Robbins. Now, he's not diagnosed with alcohol use disorder. He's a guy who, during the pandemic, like a lot of us, said he was drinking too much. He was drinking more and more, during the lockdown. And so he signed up for the study, and it was a study of the hunger hormone to see if they block the hunger hormone in us. Does that actually affect drinking, too? Does it make you not want to drink? He says, now he's only one guy, but he says it worked. He didn't have any drinks during the 2 weeks that he took that pill during that study. It's one thing that they're looking at, this hunger hormone.
It's so interesting because it feels like to me, just anecdotally, that maybe people don't even know that there is such thing as an option for medications for people with alcohol use disorder.
Absolutely. The NIH doctors said that to me. They said, we think people don't realize, we think doctors, a lot of physicians out there don't realize that there are 3, as you said, FDA-approved medications right now. As you said, they have some bad side effects, and there's not enough. So the NIH is basically saying, we're trying to expand the pool. We want there to be more FDA-approved medications. That's why they're doing this research.
Kate Snow, it's fascinating. I'm so glad that you're doing this reporting. Thank you. We're looking forward to more of Kate's report on this story tonight on Nightly News with Lester Holt, 6:30 Eastern, wherever you watch your local favorite NBC station. So listen, let's face it, brothers fight, right? So why is that a big deal? Why is that news? It is when it's the royal brothers, with new drama from Prince Harry reportedly saying Prince William knocked him to the ground in an argument. The Guardian, this outlet, says it has excerpts of Prince Harry's not yet released memoir called Spare, where he talks about an argument with William a few years ago, 2019, over Harry's wife, Meghan. Harry says William grabbed him by the collar, ripping off his necklace, and knocked him to the floor. NBC News hasn't obtained or seen the book. It's going to be released Tuesday. Kensington and Buckingham Palace, as well as Harry's reps and publisher, have declined any request from us to comment. But listen, Harry is really like going there. I want to bring in Keir Simmons now because Keir, the title of the book, Spare, is like this idea that is sort of knocked around, I think, where you are. There's the heir and then the spare, right? And Harry seems to have really internalized that and has framed a lot of the book around this.
Well, I think that's right, Hallie. Breaking news, by the way. We do now have a copy of the book. When I say we have a copy of the book, we have a copy. I know, right? When I say we have a copy of the book, we have a copy of the book in Spanish. So, because it was sold, and I don't really understand why, but it was sold in Spanish bookstores today. So we have people who speak Spanish, obviously, going through it, confirming what is now, frankly, tonight, Hallie, an avalanche of accusations.
It is,
It's quite stunning, frankly. Harry goes into detail about his personal life. He talks about taking cocaine. He talks about how he lost his virginity. He talks about the moment that he was told that his mother died. And then he makes all these claims, including, as you mentioned, that one about the altercation, the violent altercation with Prince William. But he also says, for example, do you remember in his teenage years, the controversy over him wearing a Nazi uniform? He says William and Kate howled with laughter when they saw that uniform, and yet later he was criticised and he had to apologise. He says that he and his brother urged his father not to marry Camilla, now the Queen consort. He documents an argument between Meghan and Kate. There is too much to recount right here, right now. We talked, last year, Hallie, about how the Netflix docuseries wasn't really making any headlines. Harry's making headlines now.
That is for sure. And there's another one that's come out in just the last little bit here, Keir, that I think is just so evocative of what Harry was going through in some ways in the UK. From People magazine, which as these excerpts are coming out, People has one. An excerpt where where Harry describes driving through the tunnel where his mom died at the same speed, asking his driver to do this, basically, so that he knew what it would be like in her final moments. I mean, that is just excruciating and vulnerable.
Yeah, and we know that's in the book too. We've found the pages where he says that, so we can confirm that he does write that. And listen, of course, it's terribly painful. Clearly, what is happening here, and it is by Harry's own account, is that he is taking what happened to his mum and the years afterwards when he lost his mum, and he is seeing this as an arc, as a narrative. He's in many ways, I think, seeing himself as championing the causes that she did in terms of trying to change the royal family. I should mention there's no comment from Buckingham Palace tonight, even about what I think is a really damaging accusation that his own family members briefed the press against him, briefed the media against him. No comment. And I suspect what you will see is the royal family back here in the UK just to carry on and not answer, in the hope that by not answering they kind of rise above it. But how can there be a reconciliation? I mean, Harry says in an interview that he'd like to reconcile with his brother and his father. I just don't know how he does that.
How is this playing in the UK, Keir? Because one of the things that you and I always talk about is how I think people in the U.S. are really interested in the royal family. It's a mixed bag for people over there. How is this being received?
Well, we have a graphic that can show you some of the views, and in particular, just a massive, you'll see from this graphic, a massive, some 60% of British people who say they're not really interested. Here's the thing, Hallie, I will say about that. Now, you can ask people and ask them whether they're interested. I've got to say anecdotally from my own experience, too many people will say to me, yeah, I don't care about the royal family, I don't care all about this. But tell me about what was that thing with Harry? What was that thing? And before you know it, you're into a 10-minute conversation. So I don't necessarily believe the polling. I think there is a difference between how people feel about Harry or William or Meghan or Kate and whether they're interested. Let's be honest, this is the greatest soap opera in the world, isn't it? I mean, it's been running for longer than Days of Our Lives.
Keir Simmons, thank you very much. Good luck. You and our team of Spanish translators, I know we're going to have a long night ahead of you. Thank you. Really appreciate you being with us live there from London. That does it for us this hour. Quick reminder, tomorrow, is January 6th, the second anniversary of the attack on the Capitol. I'll be hosting a special report on the January 6th committee report and the key moments from the investigation. That's tomorrow, 9 Eastern, right here on NBC News Now. Before that, of course, I'll see you for this same show. Different news tomorrow. More coverage right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.